Hi, everyone. Welcome to Time on Track. This is a Worn and Wound podcast where we talk about the high-speed racing and constantly changing storylines of Formula One. Today, we're here to talk about the Singapore Grand Prix and maybe some things heading into a second break of the year. I'm Amarveer, and I'm joined by Ricardo. Ricardo, how are you?
I'm good. There's a little interesting backstory with this episode, but we'll keep that one to ourselves. But I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Yeah, hanging in there. It's been a wild week. We are definitely recording this a little bit later. Maybe some technical difficulties on my end. But yeah, we'll keep that to ourselves. But yeah, Singapore Grand Prix wasn't the most amazing race, but there's still some fun things to, I think, pull out of it. But before we get into the actual race day, do we want to do a wrist check?
Oh, sure, definitely. Who goes first?
I'll go first because mine's pretty
old, reliable.
Exactly. You already saw it before we started hitting record. I am wearing my Rolex Submariner. It's a 16610. So this is, I think, probably circa 2006, 2007. Great watch. I've mentioned to you before, it's, if anything, kind of a boring watch in the scheme of the watch world. And I stand to that, but I was thinking about this before because I made this analogy of it to like a certain car, a 911. And it's true. It's literally, it seems boring because you see it so much, but you see it so much because it's so good. And it's maybe a watch I love and adore, and I've had for a long time. I've had for, God, I don't even know how long now. Over 10 years. And sometimes I'll skip over it for something that seems more interesting or has a better dial color or a more interesting movement or something. But the second you put it on your wrist, like I put it on my wrist on Sunday and I have not taken it off. That means nothing to anyone listening to this because what day is it? Who knows? Anyway, it's been multiple days. But it's a good watch, and there's a reason why so many people wear it. And yes, it's uninteresting, but damn, it's good.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Well, actually, a question popped into my head as you were saying it. Do you guys just automatically remember the number? Like, is that like just like a Rolex thing for you guys, where it's like every time the regular person on the street who has a Rolex will just be like, "Oh yeah, my Rolex." That's how they say it, my Rolex.
Right.
If you know a little bit about watches, then you say my Rolex Submariner.
Yep.
If you are passionate about watches, you say my Rolex Submariner 16. Like, do you guys just like? Is it just automatically just locked into your head, like the number afterwards? Does that, like, how does that work? Because I remember I tried to do that with my Grand Seiko, and I was just like, screw this.
Grand Seikos, you cannot do it, right? Like, I think certain watches you can do it. Like I had a Speedmaster, the 145-022, which is like that's like, you know, kind of the late 90s, still has the tritium on the dial. And then you can go back and there's certain other ones. I've been recently very focused on the Omega Seamaster 2450, which is like the early 2000s Seamaster. I think it comes from cars. Like, for example, I was just comparing it to like a 911. I don't look at 911s, or when I talk to car friends about 911s, we don't say, "Oh, you have a Porsche 911." We say, "Oh, you have a 996 or a 964 or a 993," which is, and immediately you know what era of 911 they're talking about and whether they have a nice one or not. For example, I have a 996, which is considered the worst 911 of all time. I love it.
Why?
I love it. Because it was like the first water cooled, the headlights are ugly. Generally, the engine is probably the least reliable I've ever made, but mine has 140,000 miles on it. And
all I hear when you say that is just charm. That's charm.
It's charm. And when you're behind the wheel, who cares what other people think? It's so fun. But do I drive it that often? Do you ever see photos of it on my Instagram account? Probably not. But every time I do get behind the wheel,
I see.
Every time I do get behind the wheel, I love it. Much like the Rolex Sub 16610.
See, now I have to speak my Explorer 2 into existence, like the specific model I want from the early 2000s.
16570. Come on.
So yes, there you go. 16570 with the red GMT hand.
Yeah,
There you
I
go.
like
I'm
that.
gonna bring that into existence. But on my end, interestingly enough, I am wearing a diver.
Okay.
I'm actually wearing a diver that, by the time this comes out, it would have come out the day before. And this is the Marathon OSAR, Original Search and Rescue. New model that they just added. It comes on a bracelet and it comes on a rubber strap as two different options. But I tossed it on this green adapt strap.
That looks
It
really cool.
is, what's the best way to say this? And I preface this by saying we sell this watch, but I am still very discerning when it comes to watches. I could respect a watch and not want to buy it.
Mhm.
This watch makes me want to buy it because it is such a good representation of just a classically well-made diver. Like,
Yeah.
no extra sprinkles on top, nothing crazy. It's just built really well. The 41 millimeter size is perfect.
Oh, that is perfect.
The knurling on the crown is perfect. Like horizontal, like everything drilled lugs. It is literally, if you looked in the dictionary in terms of just diver,
Yep.
this could easily be the picture that's represented there.
Can
if
I
it
look
wasn't
at
a
that
Rolex
dial
up.
again?
And it's like these
I
big,
like
nice plops of lume. It's this
Yeah.
Mar glow that they just started using. Like it has this really, like the bezel has these nice deep groove indents so that it's easy to grasp. It is literally like if you stuck a whole bunch of watch people in the office and said, I don't need it to be super pretty. I don't need it to be like elegant. I need a diver I know I could trust every single day of the week. I could wear it with no issues. It gets the job done. Like this would be what they would tell you at the end of the day. Okay, if this is a good option.
Yeah.
It's just really nice. It's really nice. It has a little thickness to it, but what
I
I
can see
like
that.
is top down, like you don't notice like that thickness. And because the bezel is so thick, you realize a lot of that thickness is going straight to the bezel.
Yeah.
So like
Well,
you see like the almost like the rehaut on there, and it's so deep.
Yeah,
but it's just good. It's just plain simple. It's just good.
It looks good. It looks like that bezel's nice and grippy. I do like how the bezel insert is thinner, so it gives it it kind of slims it down a little bit, but the actual bezel itself is thick.
Thick, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just well made. It's just really well made.
And it looks really good on the green adapt strap, which I think is my favorite strap. I wear my Ranger on that strap all the time.
Yeah, the Forest. There are two straps that we tend to sell out the quickest. It's the Forest and just the black.
Oh yeah,
like those two, like the Forest, the black.
There's like a bluish one that I really love as well. I don't have it, but it's like almost like a darker blue, but has a hint of green to it.
We have two. We have a denim and then we have a phthalo blue.
I think it's the second one.
So it's probably the phthalo blue. And then probably the next popular we have is the Coyote. A lot of people like that color. Mm-hmm. My personal favorite is Paprika. I just like that
reddish,
that very red, like heavy red tone. But no, I the Paprika would actually look really good on this. But yeah. Enough on my wrist check. But yeah, that watch should be live on the website by the time you guys are watching or listening to this. So definitely take a look at it. But yeah, I'm just test driving it here. It's the sample we have in the office, and it's going to be very difficult to just let this one go. But yeah.
Nice. Well, looking forward to seeing more of it on the website. I'm definitely going to be digging in on that one.
Yeah.
This is the thing when you're doing this podcast now I'm getting exposed to other watches that, I mean, I would have still seen them online and probably still, but now I'm seeing them more in another context, and now I'm like, oh, I need to learn more about this Marathon.
Yeah. It's like I always try to represent like any watch we have or just watches in general outside of like the standard like look that they have when you're first introduced to them. Like it's either some like a really like amazing, well set like photograph, or like it'll be box standard like soldier shots. But then I just like, which on this podcast I get the opportunity to do, is just show them in just like a natural state.
Yeah.
Like someone just wearing the watch, like as we would normally wear it. We would probably have it on rubber, but eventually we would put it on a NATO strap, well, on a US made mill strap, and we would just, like, we would just wear it. So yeah. Yeah, but enough on the watch. We've got to eventually talk about the race.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much to talk about this race, so it's fun to talk about watches.
I think we both admit this race was like a little bit of a snoozer.
Yeah,
it lost its excitement. I'd say literally within the first. I may even say within the first lap, it kind of lost its excitement. Because like we were coming out of qualifying, which we'll dive into. In fact, let's dive into it now.
You want to talk
coming
about
out
qualifying?
of qualifying? Yeah. We we lost. I guess I should start every like qualifying conversation with, we lost Checo Perez in Q2.
Yeah.
So he was outside. So it was basically it was a good battle in Q3, but a little bit more backstory to that. Like the Bulls did not look good early on in the week. They looked actually terrible. The McLarens were McLaren, like they were just doing their thing. Lando Norris was actually switched on, I think, from the moment he got off the airplane in Singapore to the moment he came back. But
he was absolutely locked in for this whole weekend in Singapore.
Yeah. Like whatever, like he should be like those people who repeat their process over and over again because they feel like it's successful. Like he should do everything, like shower, scrub the same parts of your body, put on your pants the same way, like just do the whole thing, because he was just switched on from the moment he got to Singapore. But yeah, I mean, coming into the weekend, I think a lot of people thought this would be a nice battle between McLaren and Ferrari, and not really knowing where Red Bull would land and not really knowing where Mercedes would land. But you know what? Take us into Q3, which I think is really the where most of what happened.
Yeah, and most of what happened has to do with how Ferrari kind of dominated the storyline in Q3, and they didn't dominate the Q3. What ended up happening is Carlos Sainz crashed, which I think speaks to a lot of how this weekend was going for a lot of teams. It's Singapore, so it's hot. They're practicing during the day. They're qualifying at night. They're racing at night. So the temperature change is pretty drastic. And Carlos Sainz, when he started to go for his hot lap, accelerated and essentially immediately lost grip and then went straight into a wall, which led to a red flag. He's out, and basically set the stage where everyone qualifying had one opportunity, so one lap to get a fast time. So that red flag by Carlos did two things for me. One, it kind of set the stage for how people were understanding their tires. He clearly didn't. There was no temp in the tires, and he went into a turn probably at a speed he would normally be capable of. But given the lack of heat in tires, he hit the wall. And then two, it gave the opportunity for everyone to show one quick lap. We ended up with a fun starting grid coming out of that, because we saw Lando, who ended up in pole, had a good lap. But then I think maybe to a few people's surprise, we had Max Verstappen in second and Lewis Hamilton in third. So two people that probably salvaged a qualifying that they didn't expect to be doing as well as they were. So fun starting grid. It even featured a Nico Hulkenberg, I think, qualifying in sixth, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So we had Lando, Max, Lewis, George Russell, Oscar Piastri, Nico Hulkenberg, Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, Fernando's been on that, like, I'm gonna drag this thing to the finish line, and I don't. He's been on a, like, he has no business being in the top 10. I'm just, like, no business.
Yeah.
Anyone else, like, they would be like on the bottom half of the grid, but Fernando just, like, he finds a way.
He finds a way. Yuki Tsunoda in 8th, and then we had Leclerc and Sainz both with no times. I'm thinking this was just like a very bad weekend, very bad qualifying for Ferrari, but they ended up salvaging it in the race somewhat, and we can definitely talk about that. So anyway, qualifying set up a fun starting grid, and unfortunately in Singapore, a place that may be second to Monaco for lack of overtakes. Even though you have a fun starting grid, you're basically reliant on, do we have like a safety car or something to make anything happen? Spoiler alert, we did not. And so that brings us into the race. And I think, should we talk about Colapinto at the start?
Yeah. There were two interesting things that happened in this race.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. First one, which we're going to dive into a little bit more, is Mercedes' decision to split strategy between George Russell and Lewis Hamilton.
Yes.
Opting to put George Russell on medium tires and Lewis Hamilton on softs. So that we're going to really dive into later.
Right.
The second thing, well, three, I take it back. One, the Mercedes. Two, Colapinto. And basically three, Lando's curse of holding on to a lead in the first lap.
Yeah,
it's funny. I kind of want to start with three because all week long, that's all I heard. Oh my gosh, he has to make sure he gets the lead, and I'm sitting here and I'm just like, if it was anybody else next to him, like, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But if, seeing as it's Max Verstappen next to him, a part of me is just like, let's just survive the first lap.
Exactly.
Let's not try to be too over aggressive. Let's not try to listen to everybody who's not in the cockpit and then kind of tempt your driving to appease them. Let's just survive the first lap. I think we all agree you're locked in this whole weekend. Like, you have the car. And you look like the better McLaren this weekend. Let's not roll the dice and try to be super aggressive. Let's just, have a good start. If we're leading in the first turn, great. If we're side by side and you see an opportunity, great. Do not force anything.
Yeah.
If Max Verstappen gets a good jump, don't try to knock him to the side in the first turn. Just be like, okay, he got a good jump. I'm going to get him back. That's all, because all I kept on hearing was, oh my gosh, he 6 times, like, he can't hold on to. I'm like, shut up.
It's definitely a narrative that people have been pushing. I mean, it's a narrative for a reason. He has given up pole a few times, but in this race, he did not. He had a pretty good start, and he jumped out pretty quickly to like a 30-second lead.
Yeah,
and just kind of stayed there. So 30-second lead. He ended up winning by, I think, almost 21 seconds.
Yeah. There was a point in time early in the race where his team hit him up on the radio and was just like, hey, we have some plans for when to pit. Can you, like, eke out? We know you're like around 5. I think, what was it? It was like 3 or 4 right now. Can you eke this out to like a good lead by the time you get to the teens?
Yeah.
So like lap 15, 16, 17. This dude pulled a Max Verstappen when he actually turns the car up to 100% in 2023 and just started knocking time off.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he jumped from, I think, like 5 to like 10, 12 within a few laps. And like, you knew it was on his pace because you feel like at any point in time, like, Red Bull would have got to Max and be like, hey, let's keep this close.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there was none of that.
No.
He's just gone. Like, there was no, let's try to keep him close. He's out. Like, just let him do what he's going to do. And it was crazy. It was crazy to watch that type of dominance.
This was a good race for a reminder of how good F1 drivers are at managing pace and how much they actually do control tire wear and their ability behind the car. Because I think we were saying is Lando had a moment where he's cruising and they're like, but he's dominant. He's still winning by a lot. And then the team was like, can you turn it up? And so he went from like 0.3 to 0.8. And for him to just do that was pretty impressive. But I think while we're talking about Lando, I think a lot of the storylines out of this race were, oh my God, he almost sent it into the wall 2 or 3 times. And to me, that's really that shows how much didn't happen in this race, because the fact that people are dissecting that means really there wasn't much going on, because he didn't hit the wall. There wasn't an issue. Maybe there was a momentary lack of focus. We had some really fun radio messages where his team is telling him, take a sip of water, take a deep breath, just cruise. You've got this. But to me, that wasn't a sign of concern. And I know people are like, he needs to focus. This is it. Like, he's got to win every single race, but it's a race. If this was a close race and he came in close or locked up his tires, but he was racing someone, no one would be batting an eye at it. It's just, 52 lap race or 62 lap race. Things are going to happen.
Like, if you've ever listened to like a Mexican broadcast of a soccer game,
I have not,
and don't have the screen in front of you. Like, if you're listening to the radio, it would sound like it's the most exciting thing ever, especially if you didn't know what they were saying in Spanish.
Yeah.
But then if you see what they were saying, if you knew what they were saying and you actually watched it, it would be something as simple as he passes it to him and he passes it to him. And he's making a little run down the side, but it's like, and that's the vibe I got from those reactions. It's just like, there's just a general sense that I think everyone wants to see this fight. And everyone wants it to get to it, well, barring Red Bull fans and Red Bull, the Red Bull as a team.
Yep.
But I think mostly
we're talking about the fight between Lando and Max.
And Max.
Yeah.
And people just want it. People are so desperate for a Max Lewis moment. Like, towards the end of the season, they are one. I've never seen like people be that difficult with like a driver in the way that they've been treating Lando Norris recently. And I think like so much hatred towards him, so much calling out of like small mistakes. And I think that has less to do with his actual talent and more to do with just everyone's need to see this get to like a climax. Like, everyone's just needs to see Lando get this close to Max so that this season could be very interesting, or have like an interesting end. And in doing that, the way people are treating this and talking about it and like dissecting every single thing he's doing, or every single thing that's happening, like it just shows this desperate need after 2 years of pure dominance for there to just be some type of a challenge and some type of a battle.
Yeah. And I mean, we're definitely guilty of that too. We spent how long talking about papaya rules and all that nonsense. Like it's a thing. People want an exciting season. I want an exciting season. And we actually have a potential challenger here. I don't think he's going to actually come out on top, but I'm really holding that ground. I'm staking that.
Like, I need to know, like, what is your moment? Like, what is the moment that where you'll be like, okay, you know what? Yeah, he got this. He got this.
Lando has this?
Or like, this is interesting now.
I mean, it is interesting now. They're separated by 52 points after this Lando Norris dominant win. Max survived this weekend and actually had a pretty good showing in second place. He also was kind of racing by himself this weekend. He was 20 seconds separated from Lando and 20 seconds separated from Oscar Piastri in third. What's going to be the moment where I think Lando has a shot?
Yeah.
I don't. I think that moment is past. Unless Max doesn't finish in the points in one of these races, I don't think Lando really has a realistic shot at winning the title.
Damn. Tell me how you really feel.
I did. I've said this before, like at the last break. Like, everyone's so excited. He's down 72 points. And you know what? Since then, we got an Oscar Piastri win and 2 wins at Zandvoort and here. I wouldn't feel great about this if I was him. You need to do as much as you can, but yeah, I don't see it. I want a fun, tight end to the season, but I don't see Max losing this, which I think speaks to how good and how dominant he was to start the season. And yeah, that's we can go into this, and I bet we will during the break, about just Red Bull as an organization and how they've able to, because of how good they've been able to weather multiple storms internally and externally. But yeah, I don't think Lando is going to win this season as the Drivers' Championship. But I might be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'd be very happy about that, because that means we had a crazy F1 season. But that's Lando, right? So that's Lando winning start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the start, there was also a pretty fun maneuver from our newest F1 driver, Franco Colapinto. I can set the stage for this because
please do.
So we had in Q2, we actually had Albon and Colapinto finish in 11th and 12th. They didn't make it out of Q2. So again, the middle of the starting grid, I'll say this, starting Yuki Tsunoda in 8th, and then we had the Ferraris in 9 and 10, then Albon in 11th, Franco Colapinto in 12th, Sergio Perez and Kevin Magnussen to round out 13 and 14. So Colapinto and Albon starting next to each other on the grid. Colapinto starting on the outside track, right? The evens are all on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And then why don't you walk us through what happened next?
So he's on the outside, and Alex, who qualified ahead of him, correct? Yeah, by small margin.
By a thousandth of a second.
And I think I mentioned this before. Like, it's crazy to think, with the amount of years like Albon has under his belt, that all that experience has literally equated to a thousandth of a second. like
yeah.
You would hope that his experience would create distance between him. It shows two things. It makes you question two things: just how good is his experience? Because I like the idea of steel sharpens steel, and having like someone on the team to push you will make you better, which he really hasn't had for like 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Or is it just like Franco's that good that he's immediately that close? And it's not. I know people would be like, oh, but this is just one race. In the 3 races that Franco Colapinto has raced since he's driven for that team, he's looked remarkable. And he's looked closer to Alex Albon than anyone, and he just keeps on getting better.
Mm-hmm.
So, and which kind of leads you to this move. And he's on the outside. They're about to go into a left-hander, so he's on the outside of Albon. Albon's on the inside, and he goes. Race starts. Albon gets a little bit of a jump. And to make his turn, Albon starts leaking out to the right.
Mm-hmm.
Colapinto, opposite of most people in that situation, instead of tucking in and also following the racing line, he darts left. And literally, as I'm saying, I'm like, what is he seeing? And in that moment, the heavens part, and there's this window of like a car and a half length between the inside like limit of the track and Albon's car. And I always say this, especially for anyone who drives, and this is like whether you drive professionally or you're just driving on a highway. If you're thinking about changing lanes, it's already too late. If you want to change lanes, change lanes.
Yeah,
turn on your blinker, change lanes.
Yeah.
Like, do the whole process. Blinker, look, change. If you're wondering, maybe like, I wonder how long, don't even do it.
It's over. Yeah,
it's
you need to make the move decisively.
Yeah, decisively. Yeah. Like, it's over.
Which Colapinto was doing here.
Yes, and that's not aggressive driving. That is just being assertive and direct with how you're driving and being mindful of what you're doing. Because what aggravates me even more is people who are on the roads and they're just very timid in how they drive. Like, they're so unsure. They drive as if they're in a bubble. Okay. And they pay no attention to anything outside of the bubble.
Like, you could be on. We're going into this world of we're going to start talking about road rage.
Yes.
Let's pull this back to Colapinto.
You guys could probably tell. Like, I had a very interesting commute this morning, but like New York commute has really changed recently. But I'm going to get back to the actual race. So he sees this window, and instead of thinking, should I do it, he just does it.
Yeah.
And that's already impressive, but you could chalk that up to the ignorance of youth and just be like, okay, yeah, but you're not going to make the braking.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. Not only does he make the turn, he makes the brake and turns on a dime. And if you watch the replay, you could see the sudden jut of the car.
Yeah.
It's not a beautiful flow. It's like a here and then make turn. But he still makes it. Like, he doesn't touch anyone. He doesn't, like some of the other drivers, clearly by the radio messages, who were a little peeved by it. But in his car, he didn't touch anyone. He didn't sideswipe anyone. He got there, made the point, braked in time, turned, and kept it moving. And honestly passed 3 or 4 drivers at the same time.
Yeah, he at least... So, and that was the thing, it was because he was able to hold that line, because he was able to grip and rip like that. He forced other people off their lines. And so you saw Alex Albon, I think Carlos Sainz, and either Yuki or Fernando have to take the kind of escape route. And we had a really fun radio message from Alex Albon where he originally, in the heat of battle, was...
He dive bombed me.
Yeah, he was saying that Colapinto dive bombed him. It's kind of funny because he was so mad about it during the actual race. And then after the fact, if you hear his interview after the fact, he's like, yeah, it was a pretty good move.
So not only he pulls that move, and Albon is peeved. And I think Albon said that's a pretty good move simply because he's sitting there like, damn, this kid is making me look bad.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it is.
He's got a good teammate now.
He's got a good teammate now who's going to make him better, hopefully, and push him while he's there. But what I'm going to find interesting is if Franco gets a ride next year, mm-hmm. and they happen to cross heads, that's going to be interesting. But it's not only that. There was another point in the race where Checo needed to pass Colapinto.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And they're going at it for a couple laps. And I think this is probably the highest sense of praise a driver can give you while you're on racing, because it's so easy. I've heard so many times drivers just be like, oh, he's not giving me space. He's mm-hmm. not doing this. Instead, Checo was just like, oh, Colapinto, he can drive.
Yeah,
he could drive. He's driving really well.
Right.
Like just that sense of that those few words of praise to just be like, yo, this kid, he's not driving like I expect, like this young kid who doesn't know what he's doing. He's driving with purpose. He's defending well. And coming from someone like Checo, who in many ways is not an aggressive driver, but a very good defensive driver.
Mm-hmm. And supposedly a good street circuit driver, right? That is high praise.
So
And honestly, I'm pretty sure Lewis Hamilton said something similar after Monza or during Monza about him and Behrman. He was like, "Yeah, these young guys have pace."
Yep.
So exciting to see. Crazy pass by Colapinto. Again, this was all on lap one. So we had Lando take the lead on lap one. We had Colapinto make this amazing pass on lap one. And actually on lap one, we also had the Mercedes strategy reveal, which proved to be pretty disastrous for Lewis Hamilton, who started in third and ended up in sixth? Well, let's see, where did Lewis finish? Yeah. Well, while I'm pulling that up, we can just talk about. So Lewis Hamilton started on the grid in third place. He finished in sixth. Not great to go from 3 to 6, especially if you're Lewis and you want to be on the podium. You want to win a race. And the interesting thing in his tire strategy is he started on soft tires, while I think the remainder of the competitive field was on mediums.
Yep.
And I think when you and I initially talked about this, we were both saying this made no sense. From a strategy perspective, the idea was start on softs because you have Max Verstappen ahead of you. Let's see if you can jump ahead of Max on lap one, and this being Singapore, hard to pass, that you can maintain that lead. Maybe you're going to have to pit earlier than everyone, but maybe a safety car comes out and you can retain the lead again. That didn't happen. Off the gates, Max defends well. Lewis didn't have a bad start, but Max defended well. And so now Lewis is sitting still in third place on the soft tires, knowing he's going to have to pit before everyone else, in a situation where it's so early that there's not an undercut. And actually, if anything, it hurts him because he pitted early and came out in the mid-pack traffic. So it really, really impacted his race. It wasn't a great showing from Mercedes. And I think we've since had the opportunity to hear from Mercedes about that. Do you want to talk about what came out of Allison's mouth and George Russell's mouth, as well as Lewis Hamilton's actual take on this?
Dude. So they're having the press conferences like after the fact.
Right.
And one of the benefits of, once again, us getting a chance to do this a little bit later in the week, and is just to show you how snooze fest this race was. One of the biggest talking points of this whole week has been, why the hell did Mercedes start Lewis Hamilton on soft tires? So they get Lewis, and Lewis starts telling him, basically saying, I fought tooth and nail not to be on softs. I wanted to be on mediums. And to sum it up, he basically said, I would understand if, Russell qualified higher than me, and, I we would normally do this stuff where, let's say Russell qualifies higher than me, I'm outside of the top 10, and it makes sense to kind of split the strategies. But he was just like, we were so close together, it made no sense. And he said, it basically, it crushed his soul when he was on the grid and everyone took the towels off
the tire
to
blankets.
See he was the only the blankets to see he was the only person in the top 10 on softs. And he said, from that moment forward, I knew I was in for a long race.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, not only did I realize, once they brought me in, around lap, I think 16 or 17, he basically said, I knew my race was over.
Yeah.
Because I knew it would be very hard to keep these tires in this warm climate for all of those laps.
Yeah, because there's a triple negative effect here. One, he's starting on soft, so he knows he has to pit early. Two, he doesn't get past Lewis because Lewis has a pretty fast car. I mean, all Red Bull problems aside, it's still, a top 10 car. And three, because he has to pit early on the softs, earlier than I think he even wanted to because of the heat of the track, he now has to ride out on these hards for a lot longer than everyone else does, which means he's triply screwed there because now he's babying his hard tires for the rest of the race on a really hot track. So yeah,
Yep.
good job, Mercedes.
Yeah. And then the funniest thing in all of this is so Russell, who was on the normal strategy for the mediums, he basically said, and in terms of when he saw that there were soft tires on Lewis's car, he said he's like, when I saw that, I was thinking Lewis won't be happy. And it's the truth. Like, what was that? Like, sometimes you overthink yourself. That's what that seemed like. Like they overthought the situation. They read a little bit too much into like the historical data, safety cars and everything. And instead of being like, hey, like, what's the least riskiest move that probably most of the field is going to take? Like, in this instance, we don't need to be different.
Yeah.
We just need to be the same. That's all we need to do. And they just balk it. Because I really feel like had he gotten on mediums, I think like he wouldn't have made a challenge on Max right off the bat. But there's a good chance, especially with the way Oscar was racing this weekend, and with Russell there as like a little buffer, that one of them makes it into the top three. One of them.
Yeah.
Instead, like they're both outside, and I'm just like, come on, guys, you're killing me. Come on.
Yeah. This has kind of been Mercedes MO the entire season, right? Like I thought that coming out of the last break where we had that Russell tire hero race, but he came in underweight and Lewis ended up winning. So we had, I think, back-to-back Mercedes wins to come out of this, to enter the summer break. I thought they had figured it out, but they've just been kind of languishing this whole season where they make decisions coming out of practice to qualifying where they make aero adjustments, just car adjustments that end up throwing the car into a tizzy. It's just absolutely out of whack. And I don't know what their need to tinker is and why when they feel fast in practice, they modify more and go into qualifying with a messed up car now and then same into race day.
Yep.
But they're constantly doing this and it hasn't bode well for them all season. And I feel like the person that suffered the most out of this is Lewis Hamilton. And maybe it's just they're experimenting so much with him because he's out the door and they don't care anymore, which I think sucks for Lewis considering his history. But yeah, not a great weekend for Mercedes. Terrible tire strategy.
But you know what? In talking about this episode, I brought it up. It really does like solidify his complaints as to why he decided to move to Ferrari.
Right.
Or one of the reasons he decided to move to Ferrari. Like, you would think, like, you don't slip on a banana peel and win 7 drivers' championships.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have some talent and some sense of driving. You would think that a team who's kind of not on, like, concrete standing right now would take in the words of someone like a Lewis Hamilton. But as time progresses, it just looks like more and more that they do not. Right. That they're just not interested in what he has to say. That they feel like we know better than you. Like, this is our team. We're going to do this.
And that's kind of what he said at the beginning of the season, right? When he announced his departure for Ferrari, he said exactly that. He's like, I've tried to voice my concerns and they fall on deaf ears. And he's not getting the respect of the most winning F1 driver of all time.
And for anyone out there who thinks like, who does he think he is? It's not ego. It's actually his need or drive to win. Mm-hmm. Like, which is amazing for a driver at his age. Like, he's not satisfied with mediocre. He's still not satisfied with mediocre. Yeah. He wants opportunities to win. And like, it's a shame, but like I hope like in this break, he basically is just telling himself 6 more races. Like it's really gonna be sad though, that last race when he leaves. Like I think like it's really going to hit him, like win that last race. But I think like he's gonna, because clearly he didn't make this decision lightly.
Yeah,
I think he's going to the next day just be like, breathe a breath of fresh air, and just be like, here, I'm about to go into a different place. Where I think someone like a Fred Vasseur would really listen to what he has to say, and really take it as like you could tell me engineer, you could tell me, okay, cool. Lewis, what do you think?
There's a balance. There's absolutely a balance. And it does seem like Ferrari might have that balance a little bit better, considering how they treat Leclerc. I think McLaren's on the other end of it, where they defer too much to someone like Lando, who might not know the winning strategy just yet. But yeah, it's unfortunate. I hope Lewis gets one more win before the end of the season. I don't want him to. Was his last win the Russell technical issue? Yeah. I don't want that to be his last win in
but then he had Silverstone before that. So
yeah, which was beautiful. But
but I want his last win to be a win-win.
Yeah, agreed.
I want it to be a win-win.
And I have a feeling it's going to be Austin.
That would be nice.
That would be nice. But yeah,
perfectly. We'll segue into that.
Do you want to? Do we want to quickly talk about Ricciardo's fast lap? We can just note it.
Okay. My note is that should not be an opportunity. Like, no one should be able to do that like that. You could clearly tell, like, maybe not in the moment, like beforehand, there were some things. Like, as soon as this drivers' championship became like an actual, we may have a chance of losing this. At some point, there was definitely a conversation where, listen, points matter. Yep. And if the opportunity arises and there's a window to do so, either Yuki Tsunoda or Daniel Ricciardo are going to go for a fast lap. And I don't care where they are. I don't care if they're in top 10. I don't care if they're like 19 and 20.
Or 18.
They're going to go for that point.
I think Ricciardo was in like 17th or 18th at this point.
Yes. And he was the last man on the field.
Mm-hmm.
He was the last man because we had 2 retirements, I believe.
Right.
So he was the last guy.
Yeah.
That was definitely, there was definitely a conversation about that beforehand. So yeah.
And for context, it was, we had Lando in first and second, and Lando had the fast lap, so he potentially had an 8-point. This would have given him an 8th point in the race, and then they put Ricciardo on softs at the very end to take a fast lap.
Yeah.
My hope. Sorry, go for it.
I was going to say, what good is a fast lap if you could erase it?
Yeah.
If you could erase the meaning and the points behind it. Like, so it means nothing. If someone could literally erase that 1 point, which you put in there to kind of make a difference, like, what is the reasoning or sense for having it in the first place?
Yeah, it's always been kind of gimmicky since they introduced it, but my hope, and I'm taking the optimistic route here, that this wasn't a 2-team conspiracy, so we have 4 Red Bull cars on the grid. My hope, 5.
Mr. Piastri, at times. This is just 5 against Lando,
not 5 Red Bulls.
yes.
I see what you're saying. My hope is this was Daniel Ricciardo potentially knowing this is his last time in a Formula One car. Let me go out on some kind of high. He had an emotional press conference afterwards, but my hope was this was him saying, like, you know what, this might be the end. Put me on some softs. Let me rip off into the sunset, which he did. So good for Danny. We'll still see whether he shows up in Austin. Based on the teary-eyed press conference he gave after the fact of Singapore, it sounds like he knows something we don't, or that we all think we know, which is that he might be done for the season.
Which would be sad. But it literally is a perfect example of when you roll the dice in life, like you never know where where you'll fall. I mean, like when he made the decision to leave Red Bull, like at that time he basically was, and it seemed that way. He was just feeling like that's a toxic situation. It's in the long run, it's not going to work out for me. I'd rather lose a better car and be better, like mind wise, than be in a good car and not be better mind wise. Which kind of should have let us know maybe he just didn't have what it takes to be a champion. Because I don't know. Like, I don't know if great drivers would make that decision. Like, I think great drivers would just be like, the car is good. Like, forget Max Verstappen. I'm going to show who I am.
Yeah, because you're racing Max regardless.
Yeah. So it's, but you know what? It's going to be sad to see, but it is what it is. It is what it is.
Maybe if we do get confirmation during this next month-long break, maybe that's something we can talk about. Maybe Danny Ricciardo's greatest hits, because I am a known Ricciardo
hater.
Not necessarily a hater, but just calm down, people. Like, yeah, he's good, but calm down. So maybe this is my chance to give him some credit, because he's still a damn good driver. He's a very likable person, and he's done a lot for the sport.
You know, it just shows you the value of a Grand Prix win.
Yeah, I don't. He's got what, 5 or 6?
I think he has 8.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I think he has 8.
Calm down, me. Yeah.
Hater.
Anyway, yeah, maybe that's something we talk about if we get confirmation on it. But I don't know. I think that brings us to he has 8. He has 8. Good for you, Danny. You're not that bad, Danny Ricciardo.
Yeah, he's averaging less than 1 a season.
Yeah. You know what's funny is a lot of my family lives in Perth, Australia, and if they actually listen to this podcast, they would be so mad at me because they love Ricciardo.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, we have almost a month until the next race, and the next race is in Texas. Yeah. So we've got some time on our hands. I think everybody has some time to reflect, but I thought we could finish this episode just talking about the one thing we're thinking about going into this break, and maybe what that looks like for the rest of the season. There's 6 races left.
Yeah. One thing I'm thinking about is, seeing as this is a working break, so it's not like a summer break where factories are closed, nothing can be done. Mm-hmm. This is actually a working break.
Yeah, there's no holidays here.
My main thought goes to, what approach does McLaren take, what approach does McLaren and Red Bull take to finish out this season? Like, do Red Bull, who kind of see where their car is going and just how it's performing, do they try to work harder to kind of get it through this last 6 races? Mm-hmm. Or do they say, you know what, we're going for this last 6 races, we're gonna try our hardest, but we're not we still want to focus to the future? Or do they really just say, okay, we have to prove something, we can't just lose this like we're losing this right now, which is the one side of things. Mm-hmm. Because I think when you take into account the internal turmoil, all the things going over there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And there may be a decision to take a longer term view instead of a shorter term view for the betterment of the team. And then I look on the other side and I'm like, okay, this is a great opportunity for McLaren. Because opportunities, you can't count on them coming all the time. This may be their best opportunity to get a driver's championship in years.
Yeah.
And I'm even looking into the future in decades. Yeah. And I'm looking into the future and saying nothing is guaranteed. And because I think both you and I agree that next year is going to be like a toss up.
Yeah.
Because
I think
we believe
last year on the regs, everybody's kind of at parity. There's going to be some
Yes.
crazy stuff happening.
So you can't be like, okay, yeah, we have next year. Like, do they just go all in? Like all in, like whatever upgrades we can do, like just whatever we can do to get like Lando across this finish line and make the most challenge to Max? Or do they kind of take the approach of, okay, like whatever's working right now is working. We're not going to really, to go crazy. Clearly, we just had a really dominant race win. We're just going to continue moving in the same flow, same direction, same everything. Because I want to see, is there a desperation there? Because I think there needs to be a sense of desperation.
Mm-hmm.
Like there needs to be like we have to do this. Not like, oh, it would be nice if we get this. There has to be a sense of like, we need to accomplish this. Because nothing is guaranteed.
Yeah.
And I've yet to kind of see that from them. There still tends to be this sense of nonchalance. And I'm just like, okay, guys, like, do not, like, you have two very good drivers on your team, and one of them has had to experience crappé for for years. So let's not just assume that things are going to be great. Well, think of it this way. Red Bull assumed things were going to be great this year, and we saw how quickly that turned.
Yeah.
So let's just put all of our eggs in a basket and let's try to get this done. And that's kind of what I'm looking for in these last 6 races.
Nice. Yeah, I think everyone's going to be on pins and needles for what the heck McLaren does. Do they get their drivers in order? And can they catch Red Bull? I was going to say the thing I'm thinking about is, when is Max Verstappen going to pull out a signature win to stomp out this season? Because
last race of the year
could be, because it could, for everything everyone's talking about with, like, as we were just discussing, McLaren and can they pull their things together? Red Bull's obviously in regression, but they still have Max Verstappen in the car. And some people, I'm not one of them, have discredited Max's ability as a driver because he's been in a Red Bull, and it's been such a fast car. I look at a race like Singapore where he gets second in a car that probably wasn't a second place car,
mm-hmm.
and he gets second by 20 something seconds,
mm-hmm.
To show like Max can definitely drive.
Yeah.
So my thought was to say, when is Max going to stomp out the noise and just take this championship? But because we've been talking about McLaren and Red Bull and I want to switch it up, my new thought is Colapinto going to take that last Sauber seat, the last remaining seat in F1? And is he going to show stuff in the next 6 races where it's going to be impossible to ignore? I hope so. That would be fun.
He's done enough now to at least be considered for the seat.
Yeah. I mean, Ollie Behrman got a seat based on like 30 laps. So
yeah. so he's done enough. And Behrman's, because by the time he raced the other day, he already had a seat.
Yeah.
So you're right.
Yeah.
So yeah, like he's done enough to be considered. Now the hope would be he really, like, bare minimum, stay close to Albon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, extra credit, beat out Albon. like I think he does those, if he accomplishes the bare minimum, which is like not be 3 or 4 cars behind your teammate, like he's going to get, like, I think he's going to get that seat.
Yeah. If
he does extra credit and he beats out Albon, like we might hear he gets that seat with like 2 or 3 races left in the season.
That'd be great.
That's the difference that I'm seeing.
Great. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, those are the things we're looking forward, folks. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. We will, of course, release a couple episodes throughout the break, stay on top of everything F1.
Mm-hmm.
But If you have any comments, questions for myself, you can reach me at Ready Set Watch on Instagram. For Amavir, you could reach him at MetaWorldCool. We love talking F1, so definitely reach out to us. But with that, just want to say bye to everyone. And I wanted to say enjoy the break, but if you're an F1 fan, you really won't be.
Yeah. We'll see you in Texas.
There you go.